Hello and welcome back to Veteran Instincts. We've got a casual match for you this week, but one that we think is interesting because it's got a lot of new, exciting, shiny toys in it. We are happy to be joined by former UK System Open winner Martyn Chivers and now perennial guest, best player in Iceland, Cormac Higgins. Hi guys.
Hey.
Hello.
So, as we say, we're kind of focusing this on the new stuff. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking through the lists. Martyn, why don't we start with you? Looking at you here playing a first order list, go ahead and tell us about it.
So in this case, I've gone with 2 Epsilon Squadron cadets and Lieutenant Rivas. And on the shuttle on Gideon, I've got Fanatical, Biohex, Kylo Ren crew, and the new crew, Agent Terex, and Major Von Reg with Daredevil and Magpulse.
So hopefully the audience will be pretty familiar with the FOs and with Von Reg. But I think there's a lot of bits on Hask, maybe even including Kylo Ren crew, which we've not seen a lot. So why don't you talk us through Hask's ability and what Biohex, Kylo, and Terex do?
So Hask's ability is when an enemy ship takes a damage card, either himself or a friendly ship can take a strain to roll an extra red dice if they are only rolling 2 attack dice or less. So the idea behind it is that I can use Kylo Ren crew to put a damage card onto the ship once it's triggered with a crit, and then the rest of the list should be able to hopefully get 3 dice attacks.
Yeah, it's a real puzzle list, isn't it? And I think one of those lists that's easy to get caught out by. So you've got 3 TIE FOs here that ordinarily are rolling around throwing 2 dice at things. Gideon's ability, once a ship has a damage card, allows them to potentially have 3 die attacks at the risk of taking strain. And you get that 3 die attack by triggering, I'll show you the dark side from Kylo crew, and then landing that card using the Magpulse warheads, which of course trigger a crit, which would then become the one that you've assigned as Kylo crew.
Yes. And because it's the Kylo crew one, it goes under the shields if they have shields.
Yeah, and that's the key piece, right? That's really clever. I've got to be honest here. I have sat and watched this game briefly this morning to kind of get the overlay done, and I hadn't fully appreciated what the point of the Magpulse and Kylo Ren crew was. I'd kind of got that it was forcing the crit under shields, but I hadn't really realised that was turning on Gideon. That's a really nice combination of sort of new and old upgrades to get that working. That's a really interesting build. Is it something you came up with yourself, or had you seen it somewhere?
It was something I came up with myself. It was it was just trying to figure out a way to get that damage card on early, and trying other things with just the Epsilon Squadron cadets and Gideon, just found that the ties weren't getting the damage through enough because there were only 2 dice attacks if anything had shields and 3 agility. So I was looking at possible ways to try and get that damage card on early, potentially through shields. And then after flying Kylo in the silencer so many times, I know that crit can go through shields if it triggers. And so now actually having a crew carrier for the first order that's actually cheap enough and viable, I thought, well, I'll give it a go on this and see how it works with an i6 that can fire Magpulse.
So yeah, really nice, Martyn. I hope this does well because I already love the build. And I suppose just for completeness sake, Agent Terex here, new crew card, 6 points, and something that I've been hearing a lot of buzz around in terms of his value. And I think I'm right in saying he has 3 charges to give something a calculate at the start of engagement, after which he flips and buffs the ship he's on.
Yes, he starts off with 3 calculates on his card that at the start of the engagement phase, so it's not even an action, you can move a calculate to a ship at range 0 to 3.
Lovely.
And Cormac, for you, I think the way I tend to list build with new things come out is you take an existing archetype and you try and fit something into it. That looks closer to what you've done here with, we see Obi-Wan and Plo, both I5 Jedis, which is something we're fairly used to seeing.
So my thought process with this list was I really liked the new LAAT shuttle. It seems like a brilliant support ship, but the basic one is 51 points. And a lot of the Republic lists that have been around for the last 3 or 4 months have probably been 4-ship Republic lists. And if one of those is your 51 point LAAT, it's really hard to fit in other things around it. And then you can't get some of the new toys on the LAAT. So I decided to really just go for a fully kitted out support ship, see how much I can fit around that. And I've seen versions with Obi Delta 7B and Rick as the other ship. I kind of feel at the moment that there are a lot of things that are very consistent with 3 red dice, and it feels like having 3 green dice of the CLT is probably more beneficial than having the extra shields of the 7B. So I'm used to flying CLTs. I said I'm going to give them a go, and how much can I fit onto a LAAT that is still quite efficient and quite decent?
And there's a lot of points here, as I say, like it's not far off the price you pay for a Kylo with proton torps. So yeah, it's a high price. We know you've taken Warthog. Warthog's ability is essentially to stop you being initiative guild. It only works on generics, is that right? Clones and generics?
Yeah, it's only on himself and generics, but because there's only a very small difference between him and the base one, I found when I was playing the base LAAT that he was just getting killed at least a turn before you really needed him to survive a bit longer. So it kind of went, well, actually, there's a very little points difference. I may as well get Warthog. He sticks around for that turn that he's being killed. He'll get a shot, or he'll allow some of the other abilities, which we'll talk about, to still proc for the Jedi before he dies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree. It's not something I would necessarily have done or wouldn't have thought of in the same way that Martyn's list quite surprised me. I think the extra couple of points for Warthog is definitely worthwhile, just to ensure you do get that extra turn out of him.
Yeah, and the same is actually true of Gideon. I know a few of the guys in the squad have been talking about using Gideon with 3 dice ships, which sort of seems counterintuitive, but actually, once something's damaged, Gideon's ability also works on himself. So for the small points investment in Gideon, you get a potentially 3 dice support ship rather than a 2 dice. So I think Gideon is another example of that, where probably for the points he is over the generic, the ability is worth it, even if it's only triggering for him. We see the opening couple of turns coming out here. Martyn's coming up his board edge and has ducked Vonreg in to kind of get behind the rest of his list, and kind of looks like he's trying to play a swarmy game, all the threat coming from the same direction. And Cormac, looks like you're trying to kind of skirt the board really. You don't want to joust into this list.
No, unfortunately, the LAAT, what I have been finding with it is very easy to burn down, and it can't survive in a straight joust with even those ties. So the idea is to try and kite with it as much as possible, support the Jedi, and hopefully it lasts long enough that it can contribute and the Jedi can get ahead in the damage race before it dies. You're almost assuming it's going to die during a match, but it's just how much benefit does it give you during that time?
Yeah, and as an interesting final move there, Martyn, with the K-turn, I quite like that. You've got all the ships in the same area of the board, but rather than Vonreg kind of looking like he's going to be maybe trailing into a first engagement, if he just follows the rest of your list around, you're now going to provide something extra for Cormac to think about. Threat from a slightly different direction. Was that the kind of thought process behind that?
Yeah, it's sort of with the way that Cormac's got Plo coming around the side and the LAAT is pulling away and not wanting to engage. The list works with having Vonreg and Kylo Ren. I'll show you the dark side triggering in the same turn, if not as close to the same turn as possible. So if I'm having to turn and chase Cormac's list and Vonreg's coming around behind the shuttle, then there's a chance that I won't get the mag pulses off in the engage I want. So it's just sort of covering that angle, making Cormac have to think where he's sending Plo rounds. But at the same time, I don't want to risk throwing Vonreg into a straight joust with Plo and the Warthog when the TIE fighters in the shuttle haven't quite got round themselves.
And I suppose, Cormac, to finish off talking about your list, we've skirted over the issue of this 83-point support ship supporting 2 much cheaper aces, which is kind of slightly the wrong way around. We normally see at least a more even spread. But you've spent all those points on some interesting new upgrades. So talk us through Ayla, Wolfpack, and maybe a brief reminder of 7th Fleet Gunner for people as well.
So we'll start with Ayla. Ayla is an interesting one. She is quite expensive. She is 16 points. She grants you an ability which really is a bonus if it happens. I don't think anyone is going to be playing to get it off, but it's while an enemy ship in your bullseye performs an attack. If the defender is friendly and at range 0 to 2, the defender may change one blank result to a focus result, which is very handy with the Jedi, but I think you can't. It's a nice to happen rather than relying on it as part of your tactic. But the key thing with Ayla is she adds a focus to a link purple coordinate, which is very, very helpful because it means that not only are you allowing a coordinate and getting your Jedi more action efficiency, but you're not sacrificing your own action efficiency for that. You're actually getting a focus as well.
Yeah, and with virtually no downside. I mean, that really is an incredible linked action, isn't it? It has to be the strongest in the game.
Yeah. Then the next upgrade is we'll do the Wolf Pack next. Wolf Pack is 4 points. It's after a friendly ship at 0 to 3 defends. If the attacker is in your firing arc, the defender may gain 1 strain token to acquire a lock on the attacker. Again, it's just increasing your action efficiency. To a degree, it's slightly redundant with the fire convergence ability of the LAAT itself, which allows you to reroll dice, which we'll talk about when it actually happens. But what I felt was, even still, it gives the LAAT an ability to get a target lock before it shoots. And if the LAAT dies, it also means that my Jedi probably get target locks before it dies as well, which again just will hopefully help me get in front with the damage race later.
Cool. And to round it out, 7th Fleet Gunner is a single charge. What's the range restriction on 7th Fleet there?
It's only if the defender is in your firing arc. So the other ship can be at any range of you. You don't have to keep range with the ship, which is actually very, very handy.
So if the defender's in your firing arc, spend a charge to add a dice to the attack with a maximum of 4 dice. And I don't know whether we're going to see it here in the match, but the nice thing with the CLT Jedi is that their focus add happens after that. So you can get your range 1 3 dice shot, add the 4th with 7th Fleet, and then if you've got the bullseye, add the focus. So potential 5 dice at range 1 from these calibrated Jedi, which the 7B cannot do. Cool. So we've seen sort of turn 2 there. Martyn doing a really nice job actually with the barrel rolls and the TIE fighters of lining everything up in nice lanes coming down board. Already putting a lot of pressure on Warthog, who's a little bit less maneuverable, certainly the least maneuverable bit of your list. And I see there you've sort of flown over that rock in an effort to get away, actually sort of slightly unlucky to take the damage, and already a shield down, but definitely better than getting caught by this list on this turn. Was that sort of a necessary evil, Cormac?
Yeah, like what I found was after turn 1, when I did my first move, my options were either to do a 3 bank and go around the rock, but it was going to be so slow going around the rock that I knew that the ties could easily catch up with the LAAT. So looking at it, it was more sensible to actually just go over the rock, and next turn then I've got 2 rocks and a gas cloud between me and the ties. So if they want to come for the LAAT, they're probably not going to get good shots. And then I've got a couple of asteroids in the way for maneuvering for them afterwards. So it was worth the risk of going over the rock for position for next turn.
Yeah, and I think that's something that almost all players could benefit from. I think certainly if you come from first edition, but for most sort of experienced players, the idea of going over the obstacles is kind of anathema, and unless you're open to the idea, you kind of discount the moves that hit the rocks. And certainly with a 10 health, 1 agility ship, that shield really doesn't mean much, and it certainly is worth the risk for getting a good position. Different story if it's Suntir or Fen Rao, obviously. Lloyd, I know you're a big fan of kind of surprising people by going over rocks. Is that something that you've always got in the back of your mind?
Yeah, it's definitely. If your alternative is that slow ship that isn't particularly offensive itself, getting caught by a bunch of TIE fighters and getting halved before it gets anywhere, then yeah, it's an easy choice, right? But it's being willing to make that calculation and determine that in advance and knowing that Martyn has a position where he can very quickly trap Warthog and get him caught. And yeah, it's one of those things that we've spoken about in the past, right? It's sort of getting decent at X-Wing is about learning the rules and how to interact with them and how to use them to your benefit. And then getting very good at X-Wing is the point where then when do I choose to ignore those rules that we've spent so long learning and defining?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming into this turn, I think I'm slightly worried about your position, Cormac. I like Obi-Wan's position there. I think the hard one back up board, it has a pretty good chance of escaping the arcs of these TIE fighters. It gives him the option to bail if they do come towards him, or to put pressure on if Martyn really commits down to this bottom left-hand corner of the board. But I'm a little bit more concerned about the LAAT and Plo, is where they're going to get caught in the next turn or two. And as you've already kind of hinted to in the practice games you've had with prior to this game, Warthog, although 10 health is a decent chunk to chew through, with the 1 agility, it is going to take damage.
Yeah, my approach with the LAAT has been to try and get it close to 1 Jedi. I set Obi-Wan up. Obi-Wan with his focus force shenanigans is actually pretty good at weathering some shots. So Obi I've set up as the kind of lone wolf flanker, whereas the whole idea was to get Plo and the LAAT together, so that even if Von Reg comes for them this turn, or the shuttle comes for them this turn, they're coming into a position where they're getting quite decent shots back at them, so it's not without risk. And then hopefully the LAAT can get into a position where it becomes more of a threat for blocking. But my number one consideration is get the LAAT away from these ties as much as I can.
Yeah, and I was going to ask a question actually, and we'll come back to it in a minute maybe, about abilities that grant extra dice. But I think the LAAT here is actually quite interesting because obviously Von Reg has Magpulse missiles, so can diminish the shots that are coming back to him. But then 7th Fleet Gunner essentially offsets that and then makes the shot potentially scary again. So it's quite interesting from a kind of head sim point of view of it, but also just from a risk to Von Reg. If he wants to then double mod his Magpulse missiles, he might well be taking 3 or 4 dice in return again from Plo. It's quite interesting. So I suppose actually maybe that does lead into the question. Both lists here have got the ability to add extra red dice to attacks, and it feels like the game is starting to trend in that direction. We're seeing more and more abilities that give you not necessarily passive mods, but ways to increase your offensive abilities. What are your thoughts on that as players? Is it something you're interested in, you like to see, or do you feel like it's becoming a bit prevalent?
So I think it's something that will happen in the natural evolution of the game. We definitely saw it in 1.0, and I think it's a lot harder to add new and different abilities as the game progresses, and you get a lot more different pieces within the game. So naturally, some things are going to increase either the efficiency of dice or the number of dice. At the moment, that seems to be trending towards red dice. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I think what you do have to then adapt is think, what am I going to run that is able to deal with that? So as I said earlier, I think CLT Jedi with 3 defense dice, who can probably easily hide behind the gas cloud, is probably going to be able to withstand a lot more of these attacks than a 2 dice Delta 7B. And that may obviously change depending on what the meta looks like and what new upgrades come. But I think it's just more about adapting your list and kind of thinking, okay, we're seeing a lot of very consistent red dice. How will my list deal with that?
And Martyn, anything to add to that? Are you also kind of okay with the idea of more red dice, or is it something that concerns you more?
I mean, pretty much the same as what Cormac said. I think it's just the way that as games progress, sometimes that's the way that things go forward. And as most of you will know, that I'm used to flying things like TIE Swarms with only their 2 dice attack, and more recently I've been looking more towards the Silencer and its 3 dice attack guns, just because the TIEs do struggle to get through some of those the 3 agility ships that are being more prevalent as well. So I think it's just the way that the game's going in some places, that the more attack dice helps to get through some of the things like Cormac was saying about if things are hiding behind gas clouds, then a 2 dice TIE really struggles to get any damage through.
And we saw something similar in first edition, to be fair, didn't we? As the game kind of progressed away from 2 die attacks, Z95s, the TIE fighters of first edition, dropped off pretty precipitously.
Yeah, so maybe new tools to kind of balance that out so we don't lose them in the same way. It might be a good thing. And I think actually Gideon's a really interesting piece from that reason, right? That FFG have built that in, that he's going to boost those 2 dice that attacks that might struggle, but actually he won't help anything beyond that. So looks like they're keeping an eye on not escalating the attack dice too high. I think it's something they're aware of. So yeah, we paused the game there because I thought that was a really interesting question and really interesting responses from the guys here. But I also want to talk about what's going on in the game. We've seen Martyn sort of continuing to just pressure the middle of the board here. And importantly, as he was talking about earlier, we've just seen Kylo trigger and Warthog just in range there. And so you've shown him the dark side, and I believe assigned him a panicked pilot. From a target priority point of view, Martyn, it seems like you're going quite hard for the gunship here for Warthog. Was that always your plan from the start of the game? Is that the piece that you're most worried about?
The start of the game plan was actually trying to pick off one of the Jedi if I can, because if I'm able to get the damage card through on them from the off, then the TIEs have a much easier chance in trying to ping it down. But because of the way the board is currently set up with Warthog and Plo coming around the side, it was sort of a case of Gideon doesn't have range to trigger I'll show you the dark side on Plo at this point. So if I got it on the table now against the LAAT, then I have the option of trying to trigger it on there, especially with it already taking 1 shield of the rock. I'm actually thinking at this point, will I need to fire the mag pulse to get him damaged, or can I actually just do it with Von Reg's primary attack and save the mag pulse for the juicier targets of the Jedi at a later stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again that's something worth pointing out and going back to is talking about going into a game having a plan and thinking about how you're going to approach your opponent's list and what your priorities are, but also acknowledging that the game state is fluid and you don't want to be in a situation where you're chasing a CLT fine-tuned Jedi around the board with a shuttle, because that's a losing proposition. So finding places where you can easily take points, get damage into ships, and adjusting that plan to fit is a very sensible proposition.
And we see the Jedi here just sort of repositioning. Obi-Wan has come onto that nice flanking position. Certainly not in red Zark, and I think probably out of green as well. So at relatively little risk here, and with a nice bullseye shot lined up against green. We saw a barrel roll inboard there from Plo, which I thought was interesting. What was the thought process behind that, Cormac?
It was again just to cover the area, in that obviously, given I show you the dark side had been put onto the LAAT, I knew that Von Reg was going to want to trigger that with his mag pulse. So it was basically putting it as a proposition to Von Reg, well, if you want to come and you want to shoot at this LAAT, you are also going to get a shot from Plo. And I thought with the CLT bullseye, I thought it was more likely that I was going to get it lined up with the barrel roll, rather than if where I was, it was more possible that Von Reg could actually just dodge my arc.
Yeah, and we see here, I think the thought process is right, but I think it maybe just hasn't worked in that had you stayed where you were, Von Reg has an easy boost out of the bullseye, which I'm sure he would have taken. But I think Von Reg may well have range to get that target lock onto Warthog anyway. And so we see what looks like, is that a strain or a deplete, Martyn?
That is a deplete, just because being in range of both of the ships, or assuming I was going to be in range of both of the ships, I didn't want to risk the strain and losing Von Reg too early to upper 7 fleet gunner Plo shot.
And so deplete there for the target lock and action free. Ooh, takes an evade, really defensive there. The beauty, of course, of shooting mag pulse at a 1 agility ship is once they've hit, all of the effects sort of trigger. And with the lack of range bonus on the missiles, 2 hits will be enough to ensure that that crit goes through under the shields. We also get the first use of Terex there, chucking the calculate over to Von Reg. So he's got a nice full defensive set of tokens and the ability to get this mag pulse off on a relatively easy to hit target. So this is looking like quite a nice setup here, I think, from Martyn.
Yeah, like you said, it was. I took the evade for the defense just in case, knowing that I could move the calculator across from Terex for the offensive potential mod.
Very nice. And let's see if it pays off. So looking for 2 paint here ensures the hit. Oh, a nice hit crit. No need for any of the mods. Cormac rolls the dice because it is in the rules, but gets hit and takes a crit, which, because of Kylo, is going to be that panicked pilot under shields. And so you've got your damaged ship there that can now be targeted by the rest of the list.
And the Magpulse has also triggered the deplete and the jam, so it's now removed the LAAT's focus as well.
Very nice, very nice. Unfortunately, we get the arc check there from Revis because obviously that deplete is a red token. Unfortunately, he's just out of range, so not going to be able to trigger bonus dice from Revis this turn at least. We've got Obi-Wan with a nice range 3 bullseye shot. Just the 1 crit, but plenty of force to spend on the CLT focus there. But 2 focus, no reason to not spend it. I don't think he's got an offensive shot, and no damage done. And we come into the Plo shot onto Von Reg.
The one thing I think that we should mention that I forgot about at the start of this game was we haven't had that many things that cause jam effects in the last few months, and with the advent of the new shuttle for FO, we're probably going to be seeing a lot more jam, both from the shuttle and from Terex. And it's important to remember, first turn, take a lock onto a rock, because that will at least mean that you will be able to lose that lock in most situations before you have to lose your action later.
So we get the shot there from Plo. Not boosted, forgetting the ability there, or waiting for a better shot to use it on?
Waiting for a better shot, because obviously if you use 7 fleet, you do need to reload the shuttle and it loses a shot. And I thought that where Von Reg was going to be next turn, it was more likely that Plo could get a decent shot and the shuttle could get a decent shot. So it felt that saving until next turn was probably a better option, particularly when he had evade and calculate defending.
And again, as you say, no damage done there, and I don't think there would be no damage with the 3 dice anyway. Now we get the boosted 3 dice Gideon shot into that damaged Warthog, but nice 2 evades there. 3 agility due to the cloud effect itself, and no further damage done this turn. So Lloyd, looking at it, I think a nice setup from Martyn. I think Warthog already looking like he's in trouble, but those 2 evades there at the end kind of have meant that he's not been damaged too much by it, although he does have a rather impressive selection of red tokens to deal with this turn. How do you think it's going?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because as you say, Warthog looks like he's in a lot of danger, but he is the least offensive piece in Cormac's list. He's, as we'd said, the most expensive, but probably the least valuable. So though he's drawing a lot of fire, it is giving the other 2 ships fairly free rein to kind of do as they please. So Obi-Wan is currently in a pretty decent position, wasn't rewarded for it, but if Martyn wants to keep pressure on Obi-Wan, he's going to have to turn at least half his list away and split forces, at which point Von Reg is essentially knife fighting with the Jedi, which is, I mean, doable for Von Reg, but not an ideal position. So I don't love the situation for Warthog, but I think trading a small amount of Warthog's health for the position that Obi-Wan has is actually pretty promising. It certainly is not as over as it looks like from this board position.
And the Zai shuttle, remind me, is that a 1 agility or a 2 agility ship?
It's a 2 agility ship.
So we saw there, even with the strain, getting 4 agility through the gas cloud from a 1 dice depleted shot from Warthog, and Warthog blanking out, and the Zai shuttle wasting 4 natural evades. Always good to see at the start of the game. and the final tie plink shot into Obi, which doesn't cause any trouble. And so we're into the next turn. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Cormac does from here. I think. Why don't we go to Martyn first? And how did you feel after that first engagement? Are you relatively happy with the board state? And what are you thinking in terms of how you pursue things this turn?
I mean, I was quite happy to get obviously the crit through onto Warthog, because now that it's double stressed, it actually turns off Ayola's focus coordinate until he's got rid of the stress. So that's quite a big thing for Cormac's list. But like you were just saying about Obi-Wan's position, it's quite difficult as to what to do now. It's very easy to turn everything now towards Plo and Warthog, but that just gives Obi-Wan free reign to come in behind the ties. And at the same time, I was now considering, do I turn the shuttle and the ties and try and pin in Obi-Wan? But then there's the risk of leaving Vonreg open to both Plo and Warthog. And without the support of the rest, I'm not sure he can take them both on by himself. So it was definitely a conundrum of what to do this turn.
Yeah, and I think in general, I'm a big fan of the surprise target switch on turn 2. And I think I'd be very tempted to try and turn everything on Obi-Wan. I think Cormac's got an interesting decision with Obi here. The safe moves would appear to be to turn right out of the fight, but that's really going to keep him out of the fight for at least 2 turns. And in a 3-ship list, that's not great. And were you to just focus everything in on these 2 ships in the bottom left corner, that'd end up looking a bit silly. I think the 5 straight probably fits past that rock, and I don't think you can go slow enough with your ties to block it. So I quite like the 5 straight here, I think, with the boost to the left to get around behind the list if necessary. Cormac, what are you thinking? Maybe sort of start off with how you're going to get Warthog out of trouble and go from there.
Yeah, Warthog, obviously I knew the panic pilot was going to hit because it was going to be so easy to actually hit with Martyn's list, the way it's designed. So at this point, Warthog with the 2 stress, I am losing a lot of my points that I've spent because I've got 16 points in Ayla that I can't actually use. Now, having said that, because of Wolfpack, I've already taken a lock in the last turn on the shuttle, and I have a force. So I still do have a degree of offensive capability if I want to. My thought process is I can either just do a blue move, go straight, get rid of my strain, get rid of one of my stress, but I am very concerned that Martyn is going to follow up onto the shuttle, and with those extra dice from Gideon's ability from the ties, I could easily lose the LAAT this turn if it basically just stays where it is. My other alternative is try to again put some distance between myself and the ties. If he turns for Obi-Wan, the LAAT and Plo have free reign on Vonreg. If he turns towards the LAAT, it's at least going to be a little bit more distance towards it, and then it means Obi-Wan has a better option. So I thought about just doing a 1 forward and staying where I was, but I kind of felt that actually that puts me at more risk. So it really is just a case of I need to kite around, keep the stress, and just try and put some pressure on Vonreg.
And what are the blue moves on the LAAT? I presume that the 2 bank and the hard turns are not.
It's got a 1 and 2 straight, which is the only blues that it has. So it is the kind of ship where, although it has a full stop, which is very, very tempting, I think doing a full stop in most situations with a LAAT is probably going to be a wrong move, because getting rid of that stress afterwards is just going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, obviously, that both of you taking a bit of time here. Martyn appears to, at least with Revis, have committed to following up on the good start he's made against Warthog. But we can see a bit of a change of plan here, and I really like that K-turn, actually. That threatens a lot of the places that Obi-Wan may end up. Presumably hoping at this point that the yellow doesn't bump, because that would sort of block him back out of arc. But if Obi-Wan takes my 5 straight idea, he is at least going to be taking a kind of range shot, so it has to be a little bit defensive in his planning. Cormac, as he described, taking the 2 bank there, nicely fitting over Plo, keeping that stress. And I think I agree with that. I think that the position this turn is more important than trying to get rid of those stress. And we can see that pays dividends with Gideon flying past and certainly not getting a shot on Warthog, and presumably not getting a shot on Plow either. We get a force spend here, and Kylo trigger onto Plow. So already, I think a nice opportunity, not worrying too much about not getting Arc and setting up the list's trick on a different ship.
And so is this another panicked pilot here you're looking for, Martyn?
Yes, because again, it will limit the Jedi with his actions if I can get the double stress through, and
Yeah,
it is another red token that I can get through to trigger Revis's ability as well.
Yeah.
This is such a nice list, isn't it? Everything just, I hope it's good, because everything it feels like it should be, like the synergy with everything. I suppose my worry would be what happens when Gideon dies, but actually with 2 agility and 7 health, that's probably going to take enough fire to bring down that it shouldn't be an issue in most games. We see over there with the 5 straight, nice, and boosting around the corner. He's going to be in a really nice position next turn. May not get a shot this turn, and is only taking that one range 3 shot from an unmodded TIE fighter. Probably going to be okay.
Martyn, what was the rationale behind Yellow banking out and not slooping there?
It was just in case Obi-Wan did a sort of short bank or turn heading towards sort of Von Reg and the shuttle. It was just to keep him at bay for the short moves.
Sure.
But I hadn't actually anticipated him doing the 5 straight, so that one did catch me quite off guard.
Fair enough. Because if you had sloop there, it would look incredible for next turn, right? You would have every single one of your ties able to pressure over you the following turn.
Yeah.
And I think this move from Martyn was excellent, because I tried to put Plo and the LAAT in a position where Von Reg had very little options. He was going to get shot, but Martyn managed to put Von Reg basically out of any arcs and only coming into 1 or 2 if he wanted to.
Yeah, and the K turn from Plo I liked, because it bumps the short moves from Von Reg and gets Arcom in if he goes quicker. But yeah, the too hard towards the board edge there, it feels like you're limiting your options. It feels like a kind of scary thing to do to turn that close to the board edge. But absolutely the right move in this instance. And now Martyn has some options. You've got the Daredevil there. So looking at you now, you may just have Arc, do you think, or not?
I think it was actually quite close for Arc, but at this point is where I was actually thinking about the next turn, because I could, knowing that I'm actually out of both arcs and not getting the shot, I may have a free shot onto the LAAT. But if I sit there and stay where I am, the LAAT can easily block me next turn. So I'm actually now considering whether I do a Daredevil boost or a normal bank boost. And I was a bit concerned that the normal bank boost might take me off the board. And if it doesn't fit, then I'm sitting there and the potential to be easily blocked. So that's where I'm just trying to work out my odds of what's better position-wise, knowing that the Daredevil boost will also then take me back into Plo's arc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from there, my guess, and it is a guess, is that probably the bank boost is okay in terms of staying on the board, but you probably end up in Plo's arc anyway, so it might not make much difference. The nice thing with the hard turn is that you're out of Warthog's arc now, and the hard turn boost is not going to put you back into it, because it's not going to move the inboard-most corner of your ship any further into the center of the board. So I think I probably would opt for the Daredevil boost here. And you guys were sort of mentioning this before we started recording, but we see you there. I think you declared the Daredevil boost and tested out the other boost to see whether it would have fit. And I think in a practice game, that's something that we do quite often, isn't it, Lloyd? And it's a really nice, that's the way to do it, is to make the decision, tell your opponent what you're doing, but then if they don't mind, gain that extra bit of information in terms of, spatial awareness and practice for next time you run the list.
And again, just as we do this, we see some more value there from Agent Tarek's upgrade card. just giving Von Reg that little bit of action efficiency that he's sometimes struggled for in the past. And so his ability here to boost and get a token is something he has always struggled with. And it's kind of been where the efficiencies have been slightly missing. And now the use of Agent Terex is giving Martyn back that efficiency.
And a decent roll there. 2 hits, 2 focuses. Decides to reroll both, wanting to keep that calculate, I'm sure, for defense. And rolls into 3 hits, which is not a bad outcome, single mod. All 3 of which go through onto a strained Warthog. Obviously, the downside of not clearing the stress there is you don't clear the strain either. And Warthog already down to 5 health. No arc from Obi-Wan there. And now we get Plo. Only has Von Reg to shoot at. Arc check from Warthog to see whether he gets rerolls. He does not. And this is going to be a range 2 shot into Von Reg with only the force for modification.
Yeah, we were actually checking for 7th Fleet because I wanted to boost it up to 3 for that shot. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, 7th Fleet only works if you're in arc. So I wasn't able to actually boost it up at that point.
Yeah, and the 3 of 8 dice there from Von Reg, who kept his target lock from last turn, so only did the single action this turn. No shot from Hask. Warthog gets to fire into the shuttle. It's going to be 2 dice. Just a single focus, but had the target lock from defending last turn with Wolfpack. Would you have got the rerolls there from his ability anyway?
No, his ability doesn't work on himself. So the LAAT fire convergence is only on other ships.
So we see there the benefit of Wolfpack forgetting himself, but 1 hit after the rerolls into 1 evade and no damage done. And just some long range tie shots here to finish out the round. 1 hit on Obi. Going to be unhappy to take damage here, I would have thought, with a focus, force, and 4 dice. And is okay.
It's a prime example of what I was saying earlier about the 2 red dice into 4 agility ships, or 3 agility ships.
Yeah, it's just going to struggle, isn't it? And a choice here, I presume we're going to see a shot into Warthog with the bonus dice rather than the range 2 through the cloud into Plo. But we'll see what happens. Any reason, do you think, Lloyd, not to shoot Warthog here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've said that Plo is the more dangerous ship, but the likelihood of putting damage into a ship with 4 agility and a gas cloud and force is, I mean, it's basically meaningless, right? So, yeah, you just take the bonus damage while you can. Unless you're massively behind and there's minutes left in the game and you need some points to win and you need a Hail Mary. I think otherwise you take the sensible damage that's on offer.
And so we see a 2 dice shot there from Revis. And Warthog gets the evade and doesn't take the crit rolled. Forgetting the ability to bump up the attack there or not wanting to take the downside?
I think with that one, I actually forgot. After all that and the way the list goes there, I actually forgot. And I think I said it to Cormac about a turn afterwards, going, oh, Revis could have rolled an extra dice there. But
yeah, and that's something I've certainly done, definitely in practice game, probably even in tournaments, of doing all the hard work to set up the trick of the list and then forgetting to do the trick of the list. But early days, only a few games in, and I think we can put that down as a missed opportunity. But you can see the potential there. You know, that extra dice may well have a forced crit through onto Warthog, and then he's starting to look in even more trouble than he is in at the moment. So, kind of uneventful in terms of the damage there. Warthog took the 3, but then no more damage done that round. And this is looking pretty good for Martyn at this stage, I think. Yellow TIE Fighter a little bit out of position, but everything else looking like they've got nice moves this turn, you know, relatively easy to get arcs on target. Von Reg may need to take a turn off unless he wants to be really aggressive. And Cormac, you've got to be starting to feel like you're getting a bit behind in the damage race there.
Yeah, a little bit, but I was actually at this point I was relatively happy because I was looking at from the point of view of at least Warthog is relatively protected for this turn. Most of the ties won't be able to get a decent shot on them. Yes, the shuttle probably will. Von Reg won't be able to get a shot on them. So It felt like the LAAT was going to have a turn off this turn to at least get rid of one of its stress, and maybe then next turn become a little bit more relevant once it's got rid of all of those red tokens.
And that was the downside here of having to do the Daredevil boost. It really limited Von Reg's options of what he could do now, because if I want to clear the stress, I've got to do a blue maneuver, and I was really worried here about, with the hard turns or whatnot, being blocked by Plo and sitting range 1 of the LAAT in arc.
Yeah, and so we can see exactly that. A nice bump there, clears all but one stress. Going to take a decent shot from Gideon here, but the only other shot coming in is maybe a range 3 obstructed by a gas cloud shot from that green TIE fighter. Very nice move with Plo here. Love the bank, fitting nicely, and I think that the hard turn was correct from Gideon Hask, but it was very predictable, and Cormac doing a nice job of just fitting into the side of that ship. Nice range 1, bullseye lined up, all the tricks ready to go. So this could hurt. And just waiting to see here action choices from Plo, and then to work out where Obi's going.
So at this point, I'm deciding, because Von Reg has the one hard, which is blue, it's a great little move, and they can really put pressure onto my Plo, even though I've got a great position on Gideon. If Von Reg has done the one hard here, Plo is taking a range 1, probably double modded shot. So I am a little bit worried about that, but I make the decision that with Obi-Wan and the LAAT, even if Von Reg does that, Von Reg is going to be under a lot of pressure because he'll be taking 2 shots.
Yeah, and your options of what to do about it were slightly limited, weren't you? You could have barrel rolled towards Warthog. You'd have sat yourself in front of Gideon. Maybe not a huge issue in and of itself, because Gideon's got a better shot on Warthog, and dividing the fire is not a problem. I think the major issue for it is, I think if you had done that, were Von Reg to have one-harded, you'd have bumped him all the way back and sat him on the front of Warthog. So no shot from Warthog, still getting a range 1 shot from Von Reg into Plo. And then if Plo does take damage, you're in a spot of bother. So I think correct decision to kind of stay there and focus. Very nice repositioning from Obi-Wan, using the Jedi's ability to double reposition, getting himself out of the one arc, only taking 1 shot from the green TIE fighter here, and gets his arc round. Definitely has a shot on Gideon. I was going to say, and may have a shot on Von Reg. Martyn, I think other than forgetting the bonus dice, that might be the first sort of genuine mistake we've seen of the game. Presumably that wasn't the plan.
No, I think Gideon came round a lot more than I was expecting him to, because knowing that Plo may try and block the one bank or the hard one, the plan was here to have the option to either barrel roll away and then maybe Daredevil back in to still have a shot on something. So I went for the 2 bank with that in mind. I mean, in hindsight now, maybe a straight would have been better to be able to do that, or even risking the hard one or the 1 bank. But yes, bumping the shuttle itself was not part of the plan at all. But I think, luckily, we'll find out when we do the arc check, is I'm only sitting in the LAAT and Obi's arc, and with the help of Agent Terex, are still able to give Von Reg the calculate, so that he still has at least a modification for his defense.
Very nice. And that's the last calculate from Terex, is that right?
That is correct. So now Agent Terex flips over. So when he becomes a cyborg, it's during the systems phase, roll 1 attack dice. On a hit or a crit result, gain 1 calculate token. Otherwise, gain 1 jam token. And then as an action, you can transfer 1 calculate token or 1 jam token to a ship at range 0 to 3.
Very nice.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's not necessarily worse. You do want to still be having access to your actions to hand off those jam tokens if you get them. It's slightly unpredictable, but yeah, I suppose you lose the consistency of it, but it's just a different ability. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and we see there that calculate coming into play. Obi-Wan rolling 1 dice initially, getting the reroll from the fire convergence, getting 2 hits, but Vonreg getting just enough with to evade focus, spending the calculate to evade all of that. And as we see here, it's out of arc of flow. So we're going to get our magical 5 dice. So this is a 3 dice range 1 attack from Plo, boosted with 7th Fleet Gunner to 4 dice, adding the focus with the CLT configuration, and has a decision to make here. Has 1 forced left, so could re-roll the 1 dice. I think the best chance of maximum hits is to re-roll both, but obviously the downside is you potentially end up with 3 rather than 4. Cormac looks like he's choosing to re-roll both here. Yep. Oh, and very nice, very nice. This could even things up in a single shot. So 4 hits and a crit. Oh, but 2 natural evades from Gideon there, taking a shield, and the crit goes through. Martyn helpfully flipping that off the board, but I believe that is a damage sensor array.
But out of nowhere, all of a sudden, the LAAT suddenly seems to be quite decent value. Is that right? With the additional die from 7th Fleet Gunner and then those rerolls means all of a sudden those Jedi hitting very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that for free, right?
And the plan here was to use Plo had given his focus to Obi, because the plan was Obi was going to use 7th Fleet on Vonreg, but he just missed the bullseye by a whisker. So I was hoping to have a 4 dice shot against Vonreg and try and burn him down. But the flexibility did mean that at least if I don't use that, I can get it in from Plo.
Yeah.
That has unfortunately made Gideon angry. Gideon rolling 3 dice at range 1, so I think that's another forget of the bonus dice.
No, he cannot.
I can only roll 3 dice because I am at range 1, so I get the bonus attack.
Of course, apologies. Yep, so that was hitting the maximum. But rolled hit crit, single evade there from Warthog, and takes hit crits. So another damage and a disabled power regulator, but down to 3 hull. So not going to trigger for 2 turns. I wonder whether it would still be alive at that point. And we are down to Warthog shot himself. Got options here. Got a tokenless Vonreg or a bleeding Gideon, both at range 1. But we have the target lock on Gideon from Wolfpack, and I think that probably makes the difference for me. And I think if it's me, I probably shoot into Gideon for that reason. We'll see what happens. So start off with hit crit. Very nice. Only 2 of 8 dice being rolled, so this isn't a Gideon. And another 2 of 8. So he takes the crit, but has, without spending mods, avoided 4 damage this turn, which on a ship that is now at 4 health feels significant. Oh, we're now at 3 health, sorry. And that second crit is a fuel leak. And just some finishing up tie shots here.
So I think if my LAAT hadn't had to spend its force on defense, I think I would have shot Vonreg. But given it was completely tokenless, I decided that shooting into the shuttle seemed like a more sensible option. Now, as it turned out, obviously I rolled hit a crit out of hand anyway, but I still think shooting where the modification was probably a better option.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think this is looking like it's going to be a bit of a damage race, isn't it? And I think that was where the damage was definitely going to stick, rather than a relatively, what would have been a much more kind of roll and hope move, of kind of hoping to get that 2 damage through onto Vonreg. So we get the ion token there from the first trigger disabled, not ioned yet because you're a medium base. So we saw that final green epsilon shot coming in, but evaded and no more damage done. And having said, Cormac, that you were a little bit behind in the damage race, that turn evened it up a lot, and it really was just that one shot, and it shows that these 83 points you've spent on Warthog are not completely a waste anyway. The tricks worked that turn, and all of a sudden we've got Gideon looking like he might not survive for too much longer.
I think as well That's with the LAAT being severely hampered by the panicked pilot in the first engagement. So I am basically losing all my benefit of Ayla. So if I had not been panicked pilot, then I would also be adding to the Jedi's ability every turn a little bit more. So there's definitely merit in it. It's just a question mark of finding that balance.
Yeah, and so against a different list that wasn't able to turn off Ayla in the same way, maybe we'd be seeing even more value. I think it's definitely a reasonable point. I'm not sure. We'll have to see how the game goes on. I'm sold on the abilities, definitely, of Warthog. I think all of those cards are good. I just think that 83 points is a lot to spend for them.
Yeah, I think increasingly as I sort of watch this, and this round, as you said, it's actually done a really good job of earning some value back. But R2D2 can carry a Sakura crew, and that total combo is 48 points. And if you want to put a 7th Fleet gunner on it, you can do it for 57, and that feels much better value.
Yeah, I think this is when I've been building for Republic at the moment. I do keep coming back to R2D2 and using a lot of the crew. So, for example, you can put Wolfpack on R2D2. You can put concussion bombs onto him, and I actually think that he's a really good option going forward. But I was determined to try and fit the LAAT into something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We appreciate that because it's given us this content and this much to talk about. But yeah, I think I agree that the LAAT certainly feels very expensive. It's bringing a lot of interesting tricks to the table, but you could lose 1 or 2 of those tricks and save yourself 30 points. And that feels problematic for the LAAT, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it's early days. This is the first time I've seen it on the table personally. But yeah, that I agree. I think if we look at the game state, we've got a bunch of damage done either side. But looking at the points, for half points, Cormac scored 30, whereas Martyn's on 42. So although the amount of damage done is fairly even, it's looking at this point as we're getting, it's been a thoughtful game. We're getting through the turns. I worry about Cormac's ability to catch up in terms of the amount of points he's going to need to score to bring this game back around. And I think you were saying with the kind of the comparison with RT within its own faction, but we can see here on the board the comparison with Gideon, right? Gideon has brought an equal, perhaps arguably, more consistent set of tricks. And for 23 points less, she's got a force carrier. She's handing out calculates right, left, and center. We haven't seen Fanatical or Biohex trigger yet, but Fanatical is now, turned on. So, had Martyn rolled a focus, he could have used Fanatical to mod it.
In Gideon's actual attack on the LAAT, I rolled crit in 2 eyeballs, and initially I spent the focus, but then I changed my mind on it and spent, because Fanatical turned one of them and the force hit the other eyeball, and it still kept my focus for the defense if on the LAAT return fire. I think we actually missed it happen.
Yeah, it didn't need it, but it did trigger. Yeah, so I think of the two, you just feel like you're getting so much more value out of Gideon.
This dice roll that's just happened right now is the Cyborg Agent Terex systems phase. So I rolled a hit, which means I don't get the jam and I get the calculate, which is quite crucial at the moment considering Gideon's got a damage sensor array.
Yeah, very nice. So you're getting those kind of tokens for offense and defense, or maybe even the ability to try and fix the sensor array, although with 3 health left, probably not the time to do it. TIE fighters sort of continues coming in and put pressure here, and I think they've as they have been all game, are still in a nice position. Warthog going to struggle to get out of arcs, and in fact we can see is in 2 of the arcs, and that green guy just covering a lot of places where these Jedi, particularly Plo, may end up. And having said they're only 2 dice guns and they're unlikely to do significant damage to the Jedi, it does mean Cormac has to be cautious. So he can't go spending force to double reposition. I think he has to keep himself with a defensive token of some sort. So definitely useful to have that green arc pointing where it is at the moment. Gideon's maneuver fitting nicely. Going to be trading blows again with Warthog here. Really nice, guys. Not only have you brought new content for us, but you've rammed it really hard at each other. So we're really seeing these abilities trigger every turn. That's very kind of you.
Game, please.
And we're just waiting to see the Jedi's action here. So K-turn from play. Is that sort of just needing to keep the pressure on at this stage, Cormac?
Yeah, I thought Gideon could do the hard stop. And I kind of really need to try and get Gideon off the table. And it was also a case of where is Von Reg going to go? And I thought Von Reg could easily do the sloop or the K-turn. So it was trying to just keep pressure on the shuttle, cover maybe where Von Reg was going to be, because I wanted to cover with Obi the one hard from Von Reg if he decided to go that direction. So it was basically just covering some angles rather than anything else.
And Obi again sitting in a really nice place here. No shots at the moment, but definitely, as we can see, threatening where Von Reg may end up, and not in any arcs himself. And Von Reg not wanting to stay there, I would suggest. He's currently in 2 arcs with Terex's calculates now gone and flipped to that sideboard card. Isn't going to get any free tokens this round, so needs to be a little bit more careful. But obviously has the ability to double reposition.
And I think this is where the advantage of Daredevil on Von Reg just means that Martyn can move him in such a different, I suppose, trajectories than you would normally expect, because I did not expect Von Reg to be over in that direction. And most of the time, if he is, he's not going to be getting a shot on me. But Martyn can put him in a position where he's not going to get blocked and then use Daredevil to get the shot. It means he's going to take a shot, but at this stage of the game, he's up on points. It's probably worth it.
Yeah, and now just the decision as to whether to take that lock or not. Goes ahead, takes the strain. Slightly risky, given that there's the Obi shot coming in, but it is only going to be the Obi shot, and at least range 2, if not range 3. And then we see the Daredevil boost there. And then for people who don't run Von Reg, obviously there's a lot of ships that can take Daredevil. The beauty of it on Von Reg is he's often has a red token he needs to clear the next round anyway. So adding the stress from Von Reg isn't as limiting as it might be on a Suntir Fell or similar. And also he's got the really nice blue moves to get rid of it with the 1 hard and with the 1 and 2 banks there. So we get the range 1 shot here.
I choose to fire the mag pulse for this shot too, because I'm still trying to get that crit through on Plo with the ties coming in.
Yeah, and we had that Kylo set up from earlier. So 3 dice, just the target lock from mods, hit and 2 focus. Always the way when you've got the lock as you roll the focuses, and hit crit there to finish up with. So Plo really wanting to see 2 paint here. Oof, and does. That seems pretty big. Not taking that double stress. That would have been a triple stress Jedi, and bonus dice for this green TIE fighter coming in. So an important moment to roll the paint there. Only an average roll and not super likely to take the crit there, but certainly very important that he didn't.
I think in hindsight, I probably should have saved the mag pulse there and actually gone for the 4 dice primary with the lock, because that was more chance in actually at least stripping Plo's shield, if not getting the crit through.
Yeah, you may well have ended up with the damage on anyway. So we get a nice 2 hits from Obi here onto a strained Von Reg, and with the 2 agility is only able to roll 1, so takes 1 shield, 1 above half. And Play has a choice between the green Epsilon, but presume again that he's going to be firing into the already damaged Gideon Hask here. 2 dice either way, 3 agility either way. Doesn't seem to be any reason to shoot the FA. Ooh, hit crit, nice. And Gideon not rolling the 2 evades of last turn, but getting just enough, and the combination of the force and with that Terex calculate there, still taking no damage. Really feel like he could have blown up by now at this point, but he's still going to weather some more shots. So Gideon here, nice hit crit, and there we see Fanatical triggering again. The strained Warthog taking hit crit. and adding a damaged engine to his disabled power regulator. Only 1 health left.
So at this point in the game, I really, really, really want Gideon to die because I feel like he should have been dead, and I'm really, really worried that if he's not dead, then that is game over.
Yeah, and this is the last available shot. So hit, crit, reroll again with Wolfpack. Wolfpack really looking value at this point. 2 hits and a crit. And 1 evades just rolled off the mat there. But because of the fuel leak, that is just enough bonus damage from the fuel leak triggering, and Gideon is indeed off the board. But you needed a very good roll to do it. So there's still hope.
And so we've talked quite a bit as well about action efficiency in 2nd edition, and that Gideon build that we've just seen. Martyn took or modified 3 focus results without an action that turn. So he had the Terex calculate, he had a force, and he had a fanatical conversion on offense as well. So I think what we saw there is a ship that was actually very, very efficient, even after it had kind of done its tricks. I think more efficient than I'd given it credit for at the start, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just seeing the Revis roll coming in here, has his lock from the Ion that Warthog just took, and has a focus. So 2 hits into a 1 agility Warthog, and I think that is a dead Warthog. So yeah, the combination of that very efficient Gideon and a bit of extra damage from Von Reg and from these TIE fighters means that we've traded the support ships, and Martyn is up 83 to 60. Shot coming in here. 1 hit onto Plo. Plo only has 1 force. Even if he has to spend the force here, that is something. It's going to be force sort of star for next turn. But gets the evades needed and back up to full force for the next turn.
So at this point, we had taken Warthog away, but actually Warthog will stay until the end phase. So Wolfpack is still in play. So this is where the benefits of having Warthog as the pilot is actually quite helpful, because it means the Plo can actually take a target lock on Green, who shot at him this turn.
And that's sort of almost extending that fire convergence for 1 turn longer, right? You're still going to get those free rerolls from your support ship. And that's presumably going to be true here as well from the shot onto Obi, who takes a shield. Not ideal, but again has the opportunity, I presume, or maybe wasn't in arc. Do you need to be? What's the deal with Wolfpack?
So with Wolfpack, you need to be in arc of the LAAT, and we figured at that point that yellow wouldn't have been in the arc of Warthog.
I think that's correct.
It's also a little bit, you do, because of the downside of Wolfpack where you take the strain, you do have to be a little bit careful of it. Because Plo had a stress, I was pretty confident he was going to be doing the blue move this turn anyway. Obi-Wan taking a strain was probably a little bit more of a risk.
So, Lloyd, this is coming into the final turn. Cormac is currently down 83 points to 60 with an Obi-Wan who is 1 off half. And the only thing on Martyn's side of the board that really looks like to give up points maybe is Von Reg, who also is 1 off half himself. So I think a tricky position for Cormac at this point, and I'm not sure what I'd do to get out of it. What any clever ideas?
So he needs to score 24 points to take the lead. So any of the TIE FOs is enough points. And to me, it looks like Rivas is the most isolated, and he'd actually be the one I'd be going for. I'd be going hard for him with Plo. Going for Von Reg is tricky, right? Because you've got very limited time. You've only got 2 die attacks if you do get him, and he's got the ability to double reposition, including Daredevil, to get out of those shots. So he's not, if he ends up in arc, he's not very tanky, but he is very squirrely. So I think I would actually switch targets and try and just take an FO off, which you can do in 1 or 2 shots if they go well. So with not long left on the clock, I'd be trying to get 2 rounds in to try and kill an FO or half 2 of them, ideally killing 1 of them.
And Cormac, was that your thought? Were you aware of the time and the points at this point?
Yeah, and the natural inclination at this point is, well, I only need 1 more shield off Von Reg. He's the one I should go for. But Plo was obviously facing the wrong way, was not going to be able to get a shot on him. Obi-Wan could put pressure onto him, but given the fact that Von Reg can double reposition or can reposition and take an evade, the likelihood of me getting that one damage through was very, very slim. So at this point, I have decided, okay, I need to just try and get a TIE fighter. Now, how I was going to do it was a little bit tricky because it was hard to work out where Martyn was going to lead, who was going to do the bumping, who was going to be in which position. So, and also I had to be aware that Obi and Plo didn't block each other. So that was a slightly difficult decision to actually make this turn, because if I go Plo for Revis, then I risk bumping into Obi, or if Martyn has put green done it too hard to the right, for example. So I decided to look at the bunch of ties, yellow and green, and say, well, I'm going to put myself in a position to get a shot on at least one of them. I have quite lucky in this game in that I have had quite a nice ability to keep my force charged up quite high. So even if I'm not relying on an action this turn, I have got at least a lock and I've got full force. So I'm quite happy in this position to take relatively unmodded shots because I have the force to mod it.
And Martyn, from your point of view, did you know you were up at this point?
Yes, so I knew I was up, and I knew that Von Reg was obviously one shield away from half. So it was in my head, I'm thinking I don't want to get him damaged, but at the same time, knowing that Obi-Wan's just taken the shield, I'm thinking if I can just get that one damage onto Obi, then in theory, if Von Reg does get halved, I should still be okay. So it was just difficult to try and work out what to do with Von Reg, and I'm thinking, do I just do the straights and go and hide behind the gas cloud, or is there a way if I do like a 2-bank to the left, I can then potentially barrel roll and daredevil back in to have a shot on something? But then if Obi-Wan has gone full on after Von Reg, that's putting him at risk. Thinking if it was the last turn and knowing that maybe, given where on the ties, it's should I be thinking of disengaging with them? But at this point, I'm thinking just getting that one more damage through on Obi-Wan. If I can get the 3 ties round, then there's a good chance that I might be able to squeeze it through with the focus fire.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And points-wise, it works, doesn't it? Because half of Obi-Wan means that you can lose a tie, you can lose half of Von Reg, and you're still going to be up. And it doesn't look likely that you're going to lose more than a tie or at half a tie in Von Reg. That would be unlucky. So I think I'd probably make the same decision. I think disengaging with everything here, you risk needing to score some points and not being able to. So I think I'm with you. I think I'd probably run with Von Reg and bring these ties to try and catch AB. I think the two bank to the left with Von Reg actually is a really nice idea. The Jedi are obviously really mobile, but with the ability to either barrel roll and then hard turn for the boost, or indeed to just boost, straight, keep going around the corner, I think that likely it is that the 2-bank is probably safe. We see quite an aggressive kind of blocking position taken up by green here. Revis coming around the corner and yellow just following up. Plo looking like he's not got many places to go. And indeed sort of comes around the corner, bumps. Not terrible. He's in range of 2 ships, but as you say, he's got both of his force, and he looks like he's probably lined up the bullseye there on the yellow TIE fighter. May cause problems for Obi, though, depending on what he's done. Oof, and that looks like the 5K, was that?
Yeah, that was the 5K. It was basically a case of, again, just there's no point in trying to chase Von Reg, but at least I also covered the 1 hard just in case Von Reg wanted to come back in. But it was mainly a case of, right, I need to kill a tie. I don't think there was any way Martyn could have blocked that 5K. So it was a Hail Mary at this point.
Yeah, and I think a really nice decision. You've got, the 4K would have bumped Plo, and there would have always been that risk. And I think, that, as you described, the fact that it was also blocking Von Reg should he have chosen to come in meant that it was probably the best move all day. I think that was a really nice move. Von Reg decided to go straight. Now barrel rolling and boosting to try and get his arc back around, but he is out of it. And we go into the final shots of the game. So this game state is that Cormac needs to kill a tie and take no damage in return. And so we're starting off with Plo. Only the one choice, really. Range 1 in bullseye. Reavers is worth more points, but not a meaningful amount more. And just the 2 force for modification. He's got the target lock, but on green, who he's bumped into. We'll see how it goes. Oh, and a very nice initial roll there. 3 hits. Decision to spend the force here or not, Cormac?
I decided to spend it because I feel like I still have 1 force and Plo hasn't taken a shield. So I feel like if Martyn's going to be shooting anyone, it's going to be Obi. So I may as well make Plo a slightly more tempting target for Martyn.
You have to give yourself a chance to win, right? So if you don't get the points off the TIE Fighter in the first place, it's all meaningless. So I think it's right.
And only the one of aid there. So looking okay at the moment. That's 3 damage straight off the bat into that yellow TIE Fighter. Obi-Wan with a follow-up shot. And Obi-Wan here has range 2 into the TIE, or range 1 just in bullseye into green. Why don't you talk us through sort of the decision-making process here, Cormac?
Well, unfortunately, if Yellow had spent his focus in that, I definitely would have shot at Yellow. But the fact that Yellow it was going to be 2 dice versus 3 with a focus, the chances of me actually doing the damage to win was slim. So I decided to take 4 dice versus 3. With the CLT, it's a guaranteed hit with my force. So I felt I had more chance of getting 2 damage into green than I did of just doing 1 into yellow. I'm not sure in the maths on that, but that felt at the time that was going to be the best option. So here goes for green. And that is not necessarily the roll I want to see.
Yeah, and so keep talking. What do you do here?
At this point, I'm thinking, do I spend 1? Do I spend 2? I really am thinking about spending 2 and keeping 1 force. But then I decided that, as Lloyd said, I need to put myself in a position to win, and I need to do maximum damage, and then just hope. If there's no point in keeping force back if I'm not up in points anyway. So at this stage, I just decide there's a chance I could 1-shot a TIE, and I take 1 shot coming back. So I just decide to spend all and go for all-out offense.
And I really like this. I think just if we can pause for 10 seconds here before the final dice are rolled, I think it's well worth pointing out here that regardless of the outcome, this is 100% the right decision because Cormac is giving himself a chance to win. At this point, he is 3 points up, and these were the only set of circumstances that led to this outcome. So regardless of what happens from here, whether Obi gets completely evaporated or he loses both ships, is irrelevant. Whether he gets the result he needs or not, he has made the right decision, 100%. So yeah, I actually, knowing this was a casual game, Cormac, and you guys were kind of just having fun and testing new stuff, you still demonstrate one of the things that we talk about a lot, about making the right decisions and looking at it sensibly and giving yourself a chance to win. And I hate to say this, I hate to say it in a situation where we're recording it, but I think you've done it perfectly in this instance.
You really must be ill, Lloyd.
To balance that out, I mean, he's in a horrible spot in the game and is having to make Hail Mary plays. But I entirely agree. I think that, we see with the dice roll there, right? To focus, having to spend the focus to stay alive with that green TIE Fighter. And he is halved. Had Cormac spent even 1 less force, that TIE Fighter wouldn't be halved, and it wouldn't matter whether Obi takes any more damage because Cormac is behind and not winning the game. So yeah, I completely agree. Definitely an instance of trying to win rather than trying not to lose, and we'll see if that pays off. 2, if not 3 shots onto Obi, a single damage, and Martyn wins the game. So starting off with the guy with no option, no choice, which I think is very sensible. Range 1, no mods because he had to spend his focus to stay alive. 1 hit.
Not what I wanted to see.
Not going to help, but this is a tokenless Obi, so even that could do it. And 3 evades. May have got early with the evades there, everyone.
Yeah, I was slightly worried at this point that don't roll 3 in the first roll.
Just a note for viewers, that is not how dice work.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How quickly we go from making sensible decisions to just witchcraft and magic.
Here I'm actually considering with yellow, is if I can actually get a crit and trigger the panic pilot onto Plo, even if it's through the shields, there is a chance for a double mod from Revis with his ability. So I'm actually considering, do I go for that? But I think in the end, I do actually still go fully into Obi-Wan.
Exceptionally greedy. I love it.
Yes.
I think you thought at this point as well that Revis wasn't going to be in range of Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Triggering Revis first here is the correct decision, isn't it? Because you get that information right now. You know, had you triggered yellow first and checked dark, you would have had that difficult choice of like, oh, do I have 2 shots into Plo? But now you know that Revis has got Obi, and Revis has rolled 2 hits. I mean, am I the only one who saw that? They were eyeballed until that final dice kicked them onto evades, right?
Cormac has installed the Dale Cromwell dice mark.
Right, last shot of the game, range 2. Still, Obi is the choice, right? You need to get 1 damage from 2 dice into 3 agility rather than 2 damage from 3 dice into 3 agility. And again, no force on Obi, which I think makes the difference. So yeah, I think the fact that Plo still has a force here means that the Obi shot is the correct one.
Yeah.
Still only need 1 hit through, but do need that 1 hit. He's got the focus. He's got the focus. So 1 hit. Obi needs the evade. And gets it. Wowzers.
At this point, I'm pretty sure I just shouted yes.
So I don't know the odds on that, Cormac, but that felt lucky.
That felt very lucky. But I kind of felt like that was my only option. At that stage, I just had to go for it, and it's one of those where I think it showed me that actually sometimes just putting yourself, and I see it with there are a lot of pilots, like for example, we see it with Dale as someone who's really good at sometimes just saying, I'm going to joust and roll dice. And I think it's very easy sometimes to forget that actually, if you do that, you have a chance of killing things.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe not always the best thing to do at the start of the game, but certainly there's a point in the game where you need to start taking more risks. And I think you did that really nicely here. The trade of Gideon for Warthog was not good for you. And had you continued to play the Jedi in the style that maybe they're most suited to, a kind of more cautious, arc dodgy style, you would not have had enough time to come back into this game. But I think you did a really nice job of switching and becoming much more aggressive with them. And although you then have to ride your luck, as Lloyd said, and as you said yourself, you at least put yourself in the position of having the chance to win. So super fun game, guys. Thank you very much. I think we'll take a moment at the end here just to go back to you and talk about the lists, sort of what you liked about them, and whether you want to keep running them. So maybe we'll kind of start with Martyn. Anything you change? Do you think this has got legs going forwards?
I definitely think it's got legs. I'm actually going to try and get to a tournament this weekend and actually put it down on the table properly to see how it goes. Whether or not to change anything, I've been looking at whether fanatical and biohexacrypt codes is worth it on Gideon. It's 3 points total with those, so it would give you a 3-point bid, and whether that's enough, because Von Reg wants to be moving second, and also with the 3 I1 ties, if you end up facing against something like droids, with Gideon's ability giving strain to the TIE fighters for the extra red dice, you want those to be firing second so that the strain doesn't actually hinder you for the return fire from the I1s.
Yeah, and it also feels like the list, as you say, is mostly there, right? Like it's a clever kind of combo piece in a way that we've not seen a lot of in second edition. And so you're at a stage already, basically, where it's just tweaks to get it to the point where you want it. It is 99% there already.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, as I said at the start, I'm on board. I loved Combo Wing in 1.0, and I'm definitely going to put this on the table. So, having said that, Cormac, I am less convinced by your list. What did you think?
I am equally unconvinced. It's a list that I keep flying at, and I'm not that convinced. But equally, it's still doing okay every time I'm flying it. But I'm not sure if that's just because I'm leveraging my, I suppose, last few months flying the Jedi rather than the LAAT is helping me that much. I think the LAAT is just very expensive for something that is going to die. So whatever points you were spending on it, you have to be assuming you were giving up. And the winning the damage race before that is going to be tricky. The Jedi do have regen, which never was a consideration in this game, but I do feel like maybe it's more of a case of how you fly the list rather than components. I think if you're going to take it, I probably may need to be more aggressive with the Jedi and then run away and regen. I'm also thinking of upgrading Warthog to Hawk because he can actually use his ability on himself and give himself a boost or a barrel at the end of the turn, which feels like it might be another help to get the LAAT out of arcs to get it a little bit more maneuverable so that it's just not going to die as quickly.
Yeah, I think for me that's kind of where I am. The support abilities are good, and they were good in that game. And all of the things you took, bar Ayla, did something, and Ayla certainly would have done something if it wasn't for the fact that Martyn's list turned out to be quite a hard counter from that point of view. It's just the fact that they cost you 83 points. And exactly as you say, although it's 10 health, it's 1 agility, it's poorly mobile, and I cannot see that list consistently scoring 83 points before it loses them. And so for me, I like the ship, I like the abilities, I like everything about it. I don't like the cost. Lloyd, what do you think?
Much the same thing. I keep looking at ways to try and kind of squeeze a bit more efficiency out of the list, and what I end up doing every time is dropping the LAAT down to something else. So again, I've spoken about it a bit, but just like a generic Y-wing with the dorsal turret and 7th fleet gunner is 40 points, which is 11 points cheaper than just the base chassis for the LAAT. And obviously, you're losing the rerolls, but it gives you a lot more points to do other things within your list. And every time I try and build something around it, it always feels like there are just better options. So it's just a huge number of points that aren't doing enough. And so I think I agree. I don't doubt that somebody will find something and have some success with it. But at the moment, it does just feel a bit too expensive for what it is.
Now, the only thing I will say overall is it feels very much dependent on what's happening as well in the wider meta. If you have a meta where there's not that many ship counts and maybe we go back to having more 2-ship lists, then they're not going to burn down the LAAT as quickly, and actually just having 3 guns is not a bad position to be. Yeah. But when you've got a scene where you have 4 to 5 ship lists at least, then it's probably going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think maybe to sum up there, the Xi is good now. The LAAT is interesting, but maybe needs other ships to be added to the faction and or a points drop. And the gunship, we do not know. So I think we'll leave it at that. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much to Lloyd for rejoining us.
Thank you for having me back.
Thanks to Cormac. And thanks to Martyn for coming on and taking us through the game and through the lists. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. And join us again in 2 weeks for another video. Bye-bye.